L'chaim. Today was the first yard site of Steve Stein. He used to come to these classes. Very holy Jew, a special person, sensitive soul. And so Shlomo Tzvi Hirsch Ben Yaakov, Neshama Sheven Aliyah, our learning throughout the year, and especially tonight, should bring elevation to his soul, and I'm sure he's looking down from on high and continuing to participate in these classes from wherever he is. Whatever that means, right? L'chaim. So, this weekend, starting Saturday night, going into Sunday and Monday, we're celebrating Shavuot. The 50th day from Pesach. And when we look at Shavuot, what it is, we know that today the way it's celebrated for the most part is cheesecakes, balinces, staying up all night, you mentioned before. And these are what the festival has become, the celebration has become. But if we go back to the root, to the source, and we look in Torah, what do we know about Shavuot from the actual source in Torah? Any ideas?
What do we know about the giving of the Torah itself?
No, the holiday of Shavuot.
I don't even know if it's like you said, I don't know anything, very little of what the Torah says. I know it's supposed to commemorate the actual deliverance of the Torah by God to the Jewish people. That I know, but not much more than that.
So the truth is precious little.
No.
We're told that it should be a holiday. It was an agricultural holiday, Torah says. We give the offering should be a wheat offering, the first wheat offering. We give the first of the wheat to make. It was actually one of the only sacrifices or offerings in the temple that were chametz. Was the Shavuot offering, because it was the day with the wheat harvest, to celebrate the wheat harvest. There is no mention of giving of a Torah, no mention or correlation in the Torah text itself between this date and the revelation at Sinai. Nothing, not even a hint to it. To the extent that in the later commentaries there's a big debate whether Shavuot actually is a celebration of giving of a Torah, or coincidentally it happens to fall out in the same time period or same day.
So it's either a harvest festival or the giving of the Torah. Or maybe
Exactly.
both or something, yeah.
It definitely is a harvest festival, and the truth is all the Jewish holidays have dual meanings. They're agricultural holidays and also religious or commemorative holidays. Pesach is a holiday of the spring festival, and also commemorates the Exodus. Sukkot is a day where we pray for water, for the fruit, so it's when that's the festival, but also to commemorate God watching over us in the desert, in the clouds and the heights. So they all have that dual meaning. Shavuot too, it's a harvest festival, but also the giving of the Torah. The question is how linked they are, and there are some commentaries that say actually Shavuot says nothing about Torah. It's a mistake because of the way the calendar falls out. Shavuot happens to be on the same day the Torah was given. That's how we say in the prayers, the time of the giving of the Torah. But the accepted view is that Shavuot is in fact a celebration of the giving of the Torah. Now, why wouldn't that be mentioned in the text? If that is what the holiday celebrates, you would think Torah would spill the beans, would let us in on this little secret. It's like, I want you to celebrate this thing on this day. I'm not telling you what you're celebrating. Figure it out for yourselves. What's that all about? And it's almost like they say the best way to remember your anniversary is to forget it once. And it's almost like God saying, this is a special day to celebrate. Right? I'm warning you. I'm reminding you, this is a special day to celebrate. I don't want to tell you why. You should know for yourselves why. If it was an important day to you, realize why. So there's this almost, this mystery around the dates of Shavuot, and there are a lot of elements to this mystery. We don't even know. I'll give you another example. We know the 6th day they were in Sinai. The 6th day of their encampment is when they got the Torah. No date given. We have to learn out from a midrash that says on this day they came to Sinai, and the word "this" in another context means Rosh Chodesh, beginning of the month. So it must be the beginning of Sivan, which must mean the 6th of Sivan was giving you the Torah. Again, a mystery around the date of the giving of the Torah, a mystery around what Shavuot says. There's a lot of almost purposeful clouding over the facts over here that seem to be pointing to something. That there's something going on here a little deeper that is being covered up. So what is Shavuot really all about? So what I want to do is, I want to explore the actual moment of revelation. The Jewish people camped at the foot of Sinai, and they had this incredibly intense experience, an experience which we kind of begin to imagine. We only sort of hear the echoes of their experience, the symptoms we know about, and we can only imagine what the actual experience was. And I want to explore what happened exactly, what was so momentous about this date, and what it should mean to us almost 3,500 years later. What does Revelation look like? Anyone have any experience? No? Okay, good. You know, they say if you talk to God, that's perfectly normal. If God talks to you, there's something wrong with you. We're all in the same boat. God hasn't talked to many of us. Maybe one day He will. We haven't experienced revelation, and definitely not the revelation in the sense that we're talking about. Although, we'll get to this soon, we do experience revelation in a minor sense. You know, the Baal Shem Tov, who's the founder of the Hasidic movement, and actually passed away on Shavuos. He writes that Shavuos, the revelation of Shavuos reverberates constantly. And it's an ongoing experience. And we're not conscious of it always. But sometimes we get a little glimmer of revelation. And it can come in many shapes and forms. But when sometimes you have this little voice in your head telling you to do something right, telling you, hey, you know, don't be mean to that person. Or the consciousness, you don't know where it's coming from, a conscientiousness. You're like, suddenly you want to do the right thing. Suddenly you're being pulled in a certain direction. You don't even know yourself why. Hey, you know, I don't usually do this. Why do I want to do this today? But I do. That, he says, is an echo of the revelation. That's God sort of communicating through you again. So we do have it in a minor sense, but definitely not to the same extent, nowhere close to what happened then. The Midrash says that every one of the 10 commandments the Jews heard, they passed out. They expired. They fainted. The experience was too overwhelming, and they could not remain in their consciousness. They couldn't remain just standing, and they passed out from this experience. And
is this in the Midrash?
The Midrash. They had to be revived after each one. The Midrash says so much so, after the first two, they told Moses, enough. We can't handle it anymore. And according to this view at least, they only heard the first 2 of the 10 commandments from God. The rest, Moses heard from God and communicated to the Jews. Because it was overwhelming, the revelation.
What does the Torah itself say what happened then? Because I thought, and again, I don't know, but I thought that the Torah says that only Moses got all 10. And he came down to tell the people, that the people didn't hear any of it. But I'm not sure that's right. What do you...
It's unclear in the actual text. The Torah seems to say the Jews heard all 10.
They did. It does.
But then it also says that Moshe was disappointed in the Jews about something, and there was a certain weakness.
The golden calf.
During the actual 10 Commandments. So the Midrash plays on that and a couple other confusing verses that are very vague. And there's a number of views in the Midrashic canon. What happened? Either they heard all 10 from God, only the first 2 from God, and Moses heard the rest and communicated to them. There was definitely, though, some communication directly from God to the Jewish people. That's clear. What exactly that communication was is a matter of debate. sec. You need a key?
Yeah, sorry. I'm dropping home.
No problem. Here. So there was a revelation, some overwhelming experience. Now, what are they here? What are these 10 commandments? Essentially, they're mitzvahs. 10 of the 613 were chosen to be the 10 commandments. Why these 10 is a great question. I don't have a great answer for all of them, and it's beyond the scope of tonight.
Oh.
They're definitely not the 10 most important. And I don't know if we can even judge what's most important, least important. Other religious beliefs believe these 10 are exalted above all the rest of the mitzvahs. We definitely don't in Judaism. In fact, there was a question. They used to say the 10 commandments every single day as part of their prayers. And the Talmud says they stopped at a certain point. The reason is people were thinking, well, these 10 are more important, we'll follow them. The rest, Moses wrote down. That's an erroneous belief. And so they took it out of the prayers, so no one should think these 10 have special, unique significance. So, for whatever reason, these 10 were chosen to be the 10 commandments, inscribed in stone, said by God. But what were they? What are the 10 commandments? I am the Lord your God. Okay, I believe in God. Don't have idols. These are pretty significant, right?
Yeah.
Of course. Although you'd think the Jews would know that by now. Right? Of course. First of all, they came from a monotheistic tribe, from Abraham. Second of all, God, the singular God, rescued them from a pagan culture in Egypt. So they already had that faith. Then we have further down, honor your parents. We have further down, don't kill, don't steal, don't be jealous. Are these important? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Are they of cosmic significance? Questionable.
Well, you can't have a society without them.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's exactly the point, though. Every society has these laws. God wasn't like, oh, God came in a mountain and said don't kill. Oh, amazing. Don't kill. Every regular society has a law like that because you can't have a society without it.
Right.
So because it's so important, it's so natural. Some would say it's even natural law, right? It's ingrained in the universe, in the world, these moral values. Do I need this whole sound and light show, this whole fanfare, this hoo-ha on a mountaintop, for God to say, Jews, do not kill, do not steal? Sounds strange. And I'll top the question up a little more. We have a very interesting tradition. And that is that Abraham already was an observant Jew. Strange.
Yeah.
There was no Judaism. But the Midrash says that Abraham intuited God's will and was observant. He kept the commandments. He observed even Pesach, eating matzahs before the Exodus. But he knew that somehow this is written into the divine code for humanity, the spiritual and cosmic significance, and so he embodied that. He intuited Torah before it was even told to him. He was spiritually sensitive to this, arena of living. And so he passed that to his children too. And them to their children. So the Jewish people who had come from this tribe, the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, grew up with these traditions, with these mitzvahs. It was known to them, whether they all kept them or didn't keep them. It was part of their family traditions, part of their faith. And so God comes in the mountain and says, I have something revolutionary to introduce to the world. And we're going to have this huge revelation at Sinai. And there's going to be a breaking of world order, thunderous noises, lightning crashing through the air. And God comes and tells them, and he lists off all their family traditions. Really, God? We've known this already for centuries. We've been doing this since we're kids. My grandparents did this already. So, what was his whole Sinai experience? And in fact, God had actually commanded them directly some of the mitzvahs before they reached Sinai. in between Egypt and Sinai, there was a place they stopped at called Mara, and they got a whole bunch of mitzvahs there already. Directly from God, commanded. Without any mass explosion of revelation. So what happened at Sinai? I think to look at Sinai as a historic experience, as, just a technical law-giving experience is incorrect. Or at least is not the whole story.
Well, wasn't the whole, again, this is what I was taught in Hebrew school, I don't know how. But my understanding with several things is that Sinai is where God had asked all the peoples of the world, will you accept these commandments? And either they said no, or they had conditions, and the Jews, the only ones that said, yes, we don't understand them all, whatever, but we trust you, you're our God, and we will accept them. And that Sinai was like the seal of the covenant, that, all right, you agreed to accept my commandments, now I will choose you to be my people. That's what I was taught.
Yes. We're going to get there. So I'll just clarify. The Jews were at Sinai for 6 or 7 days. And the last day of these 6 or 7 days was the giving of the Torah. In the lead up to that, the week beforehand, there was a lot of few very significant episodes or encounters with God. One was God telling Jewish people that you will be to me as a nation of priests and a holy people, which is basically God choosing the Jews as a chosen nation. That happened on the second day. Another one of those very important encounters when the Jews told God, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do everything you say, and then they said we will hear, meaning we have blind acceptance of what you're going to tell us. We're willing to listen, but even before we listen, we're saying yes. So yes, these all happen in the lead up to the revelation. So first of all, the question is the revelation itself, what occurred. And second of all, let's understand that within the context of this lead up.
In the context of
all these things leading up to it, what was it all about? In Jewish tradition, there are quite a few metaphors for the relationship between God and people. And in different contexts, we use different metaphors. Are you familiar with any of them? I'm sure you are.
Yeah, like the husband and the wife.
Husband and wife is one. What are some others?
Or father and children.
Father and child.
Those are the only two that I'm really fully.
We have a master and a servant. We even have a brother and sister. So there's a host of different metaphors, and they all express different facets of our relationship, because the relationship between the people and God is multifaceted. It's very broad and diverse, and it has simultaneously, it encapsulates a number of different emotions and a number of different experiences. So the father-child relationship we refer to on Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, Avinu Malkeinu. We refer to Malkeinu, a king and a father. And that's very, significant metaphors. The father-child expresses how we are innately connected to God. Like a child is a product of their parents and shares their DNA and has an inherent relationship. So to us with God, we have a soul. The master-servant relationship expresses our submission to God. How we are totally, rely on God for everything we need, but also we commit ourselves to God unconditionally. So each one of these metaphors offers something else to the Jewish experience. But perhaps the deepest metaphor is of husband and wife, or bride and groom. And this is the metaphor employed throughout Torah. We have especially in the Song of Songs, which was the work by King Solomon, a love song on a simple, plain level, but the rabbis understood it to be a code, to be a metaphor for a very deep experience, religious experience, deep relationship with God. In fact, Rabbi Akiva once said this: if all the Jewish books are holy, this one is the Holy of Holies. right? Because it expresses something so deep about our relationship with God that it's almost, a step above all the rest of Torah, which maybe is speaking about our relationship with God on a different level. The husband and wife relationship is unique amongst all relationships for many reasons. It's a relationship that's chosen as opposed to a father-son or a parent and child. It's a relationship between two different, previously unrelated entities, as opposed to parent and child. But most importantly, perhaps, it's a relationship that fuses the two together as one unit. And that's its most unique element. A parent and a child, they share something so deep, they share the same DNA, but they're always two different people, two different units, different generations, different individuals. The husband and wife have no DNA they share, have no inherent connection, but once they've chosen each other, they form a union, and their intimacy is coming together as one whole. And this expresses in our relationship with God a very deep religious experience. One that's hard to even describe, just like it's hard to describe the love between an intimate couple. It's hard to put into words. It's something which can be felt, can be experienced, but it's something that's hard to explain or describe. And the intimacy which we have with God, this union, this relationship between husband and wife, between God and the Jewish people, is something that's also beyond words, beyond language. Now, it has, like all marriages have, it's a process. So in marriage you have the courtship, engagement, and finally the consummation, the marriage itself. In the history of the Jewish people, we have these stages as well. And in a certain sense, when the Jews were leaving Egypt, that was like the courtship. They were getting to know God. God was reaching out to the Jewish people. Then there was engagement throughout the travel of the desert, the 49 days. And then we had the actual quote-unquote consummation of the marriage, the giving of the Torah. The Midrash compares giving of the Torah to a marriage. It says, B'yom chasanasai, the day of his marriage, God's marriage. When was that? The giving of the Torah. Now, there are various ways of reading this. Some say the Jewish people marry the Torah, but essentially the simplest way, I think, is that God married the Jewish people. There are some communities, I think Sephardic communities, on Shavuot, in the shul, there's a text they read, a marriage contract text, very similar to the actual marriage contract we write up between husband and wife, a ketubah, and there's a ketubah written between God and the Jewish people. Incredible. I think it's a beautiful custom. And even if we don't have that custom, but the symbolism of it is something which we definitely share. That this day of Matan Torah, day of Shavuot, is an anniversary of a wedding. A wedding between husband and wife, God and the Jewish people. Now, two people can be best of friends and be willing to give everything for each other. But it doesn't come to the same degree as an intimate relationship. What really sets them apart? What is the line that's crossed? What changes over? What is the barrier that's crossed when we speak about an intimate relationship. So take, for example, friends, they meet, they become better friends, and love develops. And then they live together even, or are very close to each other, and then they get married. This is a process. The final step in this process is the marriage, the intimacy. What changes at that point in the process that wasn't there before?
I think an agreement to live for each other, like to be one person, one unit.
Okay? So in Judaism there are two stages to this. Distinct stages, which in today's day and age, now celebration of Jewish weddings, we do them both together. But back in the day, once upon a time, it was done in two different times. There's what's called kiddushin. Engagement is translated, but it's more than just engagement, how we use that term today. And nisuin, marriage. Giving the ring, which we do under the chuppah, is actually kiddushin. It's not marriage. It's a mistake to think that it's marriage. It's actually the first step of marriage, it's engagement. Now, technically, engagement term here is already marriage, but the marriage hasn't been consummated, which means technically they're not married yet. I'll start off with a legal level. On a purely legal level, the first step, kiddushin, now makes the couple separated from the rest of the world, which means now they're no longer allowed to be or have a relationship with everyone else. They're committing to each other, and if one of them has a relationship with someone else, it's considered already adultery. So you've committed yourself to this person to the exclusion of everyone else, but they haven't yet formed the union between themselves. So it's almost the negative side of the commitment has been achieved, that no one else, to the exclusion of everyone else, but the actual union with the spouse hasn't yet happened. Right? So it's stage one. Stage two is the nisuin, the marriage, which today is effectively done through a chuppah, which is one canopy over both of them, or it's done through, after the chuppah, they go into a room secluded for 5 to 10 minutes, and that is how the marriage is officially consummated. Even if nothing happens in that room specifically, the fact that it can is very enough to say, well, there's a marriage here, a union has been achieved. So these two distinct stages are very important. Not because they're both necessary in all marriages, right? But separating them into two things is important to realize what's going on over here. Oftentimes, couples can get into a relationship and even agree to get married, but not properly understand the magnitude of what they're committing to. In today's society, marriage has lost its not charm, has lost its depth of commitment. And you can point to a lot of different things where that happened, but essentially, marriage today is not necessarily a lifetime commitment. It's not the same gravity as Torah gives to marriage. And I think separating the two different steps helps us internalize, helps us realize what is actually happening here. The first step is kiddushin. Kiddushin is when I'm committing myself to that person to the exclusion of everyone else. I'm going to go to the end of the world for you. I will do everything for you. In the ketubah, which is a legal document actually, it's writing the commitments that the groom is making towards a bride. I will support you. I will take care of you when you're sick. These are all commitments I'm making to you. Does it mean that we have a loving relationship? No, not necessarily. Does it mean that we have an intimate relationship? No, not necessarily. It means that I am giving over my life to you. I'm committing myself to you, to the exclusion of everyone else. I'm responsible for you, you're responsible for me, and we are agreeing to go ahead with this. And that's a really important first step. It's integral, but it's also only a first step. The second step has to be, well, now we need the positive side of this relationship. Now we've got everything out of the way. Distractions are gone because no one else exists in my life. I've excluded everyone else. I'm doing everything for you. I'm willing to commit myself to be financially there for you, to be emotionally there for you. And now, what is left to happen is, now we need a bond. Now we need to come together. Now we need to develop that union, which in a certain sense happens in one moment, but in another sense happens over a lifetime. These two stages were affected between God and the Jewish people and giving the Torah. We can divide Judaism into two general ideas or categories of what we do. And the way it's divided in a lot of Jewish texts is Torah and mitzvahs. What that means is the mitzvahs are the practices we do, the life we live for God. The do's and the don'ts. It can be very meaningful, doesn't need to be a list of rules. We can appreciate the mitzvahs, but essentially it's things that we do for God. It's a life we live for Him. In a relationship, that would mean I'm willing to support you. I'm willing to do anything for you. I'm going to get up every day and go to work so I can bring home money to pay our rent. I'm going to help you with everything you need help for, right? It's a behavioral commitment that shows my commitment to you to the exclusion of everything else in my life. That's the mitzvahs. But someone can live a wholly observant life, a fully committed Jewish life, but not have a real deep relationship with God. It's entirely possible that a person spends their whole day chasing after God. Services in the morning, learns a little Torah, and then does the mitzvahs, Shabbos, the holidays, kosher, everything. But there's no religious experience. There's no spiritual experience in that practice. They're fulfilling the mitzvahs that God wants, which is incredibly important, but they haven't internalized a divine presence. They haven't built a real relationship with God. The other side of this is Torah. Torah literally means studying God's texts. But what it actually means is appreciating divine wisdom, understanding the purpose of mitzvahs, understanding the depth of the divine expression in Torah. And it's really through Torah study how we begin to see the world through God's lens. We begin to appreciate God's expression, God's wisdom. Now, obviously on our level, but because the Torah is a very deep expression of God, even if we only understand part of it, when we learn Torah, we're taking it all in. Take a regular relationship. When you have an intimate moment with someone, you may not understand what's going on, right? You're doing something specific. There's a limit to how much you appreciate, but in that moment, so much is happening. So much is being transferred between the couple, more than they even understand or imagine. So we learn Torah, the same idea. There's this union going on. Our mind is connecting with God's mind. We only understand part of it. The Torah that we're learning, we understand the specific ideas, we have, a certain comprehension of it, but in that moment, there's a union created that is imparting something very deep. We are becoming one with God. So Torah and mitzvahs are two sides of this relationship we have with God, both very important. If I were to ask you, what's more important, studying Torah or doing a mitzvah? What would you answer?
I'd say doing the mitzvah.
Doing the mitzvah. Doing the mitzvah. That's what you'd think. And it makes sense. After all, Torah is a study of the mitzvahs. So what's more important? Studying how to do a mitzvah or actually doing it? Of course doing it. That's what I would think as well. But the Talmud says, if you have a conflict between a mitzvah and Torah study, if it's a mitzvah that no one else can do right now, you have to do the mitzvah. But if it's possible for someone else to do it, you can send someone else to do it, appoint someone to do it, then you should study Torah. Which seems to imply that Torah is a greater experience, greater religious value than a mitzvah. Now, if Torah is explaining the mitzvahs, how can learning about the mitzvah is only a precursor to the mitzvah? How can it be a greater value, greater significance? Now, of course, if someone needs your help, you stop Torah. But if someone else can help them, which means no one's going to be harmed, there's going to be the same achievement done in the world, then you should prefer to do Torah. And here's the idea. Torah is more than just a study of the mitzvahs. Torah is a unique encounter with God. It's a unique religious experience where we become one with God. We have this intimacy with God. Our minds are internalizing, intuiting, understanding God's wisdom. Think about that for a moment. God, the creator of heavens and earth, the ultimate, infinite, prime being, expressed his wisdom, means expressed himself into a defined text of Torah. And when we study that text, although we seem to be studying just laws and ideas, we're actually studying that expression of God, and our minds are understanding it. So there's this ultimate connection where I start to think the way God thinks. I start to see the world the way God sees the world.
Could I speak freely?
Sure.
I've always had a problem with that. I think, again, this is my opinion, but if we talk about God, it's a being beyond anything we can comprehend. And I think he's too big to put in any one scripture. I think the most, for me, personally speaking, although I've learned a lot of good, wonderful things from the Torah, I've studied some Torah, but I think you learn most about God by looking at the creation. Because while, let's say, a Jew will say the Torah, and a Christian will say the Gospels, and a Muslim will say the Quran, etc., etc., if you look at a star or a planet or the creation, it's science. It's not like one group of people says the Earth is flat, and others says it's round, or that stars really don't exist. There's a certainty of knowledge one gets from studying the creation, and my belief is studying the creation could lead one to study the Creator, because there are principles of the creation of the universe that, and the maintenance of the universe, that reflect on the Creator. So, in my opinion, while it's to me high importance to study the Torah, but I also look at other religious texts, and I try to learn. I'm not a scientist, but I'm interested in science, and I read a lot of material about science, that one can learn the most about the Creator from the creation. I mean, that's my opinion. I'm only speaking for myself.
I'm going to agree with your premise, not agree with your outcome.
No.
I agree that scientific inquiry is an incredible window to knowing God, and to appreciating the wonders of God's creation. Just leads you to be in awe of the Creator, 100%. And you're right; it's objective, it's universal. There's a certain, although science isn't fact, but there's a certain concreteness to that knowledge.
Yeah.
Agreed. However, the God we experience in creation is a God of creation. Let me give you a little metaphor. You have a preschool child, right? Goes to preschool every day, has a very warm relationship with his teacher. And the first time he sees that teacher in different contexts, he bumps into in the supermarket, the kid is shocked. Like, oh, it's a real person in the world? Like, the kid's convinced that the teacher is part of the preschool furniture. It's a preschool fixture, right? I go home and I have my parents and I have the world, whatever I do. This is part of my preschool life. in their head, this teacher is a preschool teacher. That's who this person is, right? They don't realize they're actually a person with a life, maybe a family, outside of the school setting. We're the same way. We have those preschool children, and God, the God we experience, and we have a real experience of God through nature. We experience God as this God of nature, as a creator. But a creator is sort of one role that God chose for himself. If God wouldn't have created a world, he'd still be God, right? God was there before the world was created. So God as creator is only, a specific application of God, right? How God applied himself to a certain, if you use those words, to a certain task, to a certain idea. So while it can be an incredible experience of God, it's not God how he is for himself, for itself, but rather how God is experienced through the lens of creation, right? That's the only way it can be objective in our world, because we are natural people, right? We are human beings, part of that creation. But there's obviously a depth to God that goes beyond the world. God transcends the world, transcends creation. And that God, we can never appreciate or experience within creation. Because that God isn't there, right? So to speak. God is everywhere. Well, in a certain sense, God isn't here. What I mean by that is, there's a certain depth of God which isn't within creation, because God transcends creation. And that's why we believe that degree, that infinite God, somehow was invested in Torah.
Well, okay, I understand.
Now,
that.
how it works, I can't tell you. The mechanism, how it's possible that Torah, which is a finite wisdom, which is specific ideas, carries with it something which is infinite, I don't have an answer for. We don't know how. But God told us to do this. God says, I am giving you my Torah. And the way the Midrash reads it is, when you take Torah, Oisi atem loichim, you're taking me. Or another Midrash says, the first word of the Ten Commandments, Anochi. It's an acronym. Ana nafshi kasavas Yahweh. I wrote my soul into this text. So God said, this text, you're taking me. It's more than just a nice set of laws and values and you learning. It's actually something cosmic, something deep and unique. And I think the metaphor of an intimate relationship is perfect for this. You can know about a person every fact about a person. Their eye color, their hair color, their height, their talents, their hobbies. You ask like the FBI for a profile on someone there, they can tell you their exact schedule, what they like for breakfast, food they don't like. You can know everything about a person. Yet, and everything there is to know about a person. Yet, you may not know the person, have an intimate relationship with them. So you know all about them, you don't know who they are. You don't know them, right? Now the them isn't anything specific. It's not a fact. It's not something objective. It's just you're experiencing them. You experience it. You don't know it, right? That intimate relationship you experience with the other person. You feel something for them. You feel something with them and about them. You feel them. And it can't be objective. As soon as it's objective, it's something, it's a fact. It's not them. It's something they have, right? It's a subjective feeling and experience. You can't say intimacy. You can't sort of have a textbook about it. You can't say love. Oh, I love that person. Okay, great. I know what that means. It's something more than that. It is subjective. It is an emotional experience. And so, the same with God. Philosophy and science are objective studies of God, right? Disciplines of rational thought. And while that's incredibly important, it's like the mitzvahs. It's all the details about God. And precisely because they're objective, because they're universal, is why they can't capture God itself.
Here's one other question. Is the Torah the only way that one can know God at this intimate level? Is it the only way? I say it certainly is a way, maybe the best way, but is it the only way? Or can't you say for sure?
I can't say for sure. I'll tell you why. For the most part, yes. The reason I'm hesitant is because the Zohar says something fascinating. It says that a triad, there are three intertwined things: God, the Torah, and the Jewish people. It says each one's connected to each other. So there's a certain relationship between God and the Jew, which is independent of Torah as well. We believe we're invested with divine souls. So there perhaps can be a soul experience where we know God or experience God on that intimate level without the Torah.
What about non-Jewish people? Can they know God? At the level that a Jew can know God, do you think?
Good question.
Again, I don't have an answer, but I know my own reading where, let's say, certain Christian or Buddhist mystics, they found something, and it wasn't some illusion. They discovered something huge, and they lived their whole lives in a certain way that, at least from outward, and from what you can understand from their speaking, they touched something very holy, very special, and I would say, in my opinion, they got to know God, or God got to know them. Though they weren't Jews, they had a very high-level experience. So, and that's sort of underlying my questions. I'm not saying that.
Right, absolutely.
You know.
And that the God of creation, the God of science, God you can experience through science and through philosophy, and even more through spiritual encounters and meditations, is an incredibly deep experience.
Yeah.
It's God, right? For all intents and purposes, God as creator is God. I don't mean to minimize the experience.
Yeah, because these were not scientists. These were mystics. These were
yes,
people that maybe cloistered themselves, or they devoted their entire lives to loving God, to trying to understand Him, to get through to Him, and hopefully to get a response. And from what little I could tell, they got it.
yes.
You know, something was there.
The question is, so they got it.
Yeah.
What did they get there? And that this goes back to the same idea. Yes, maybe more than science and more than philosophy.
Yeah.
But a mystical journey, or a human being's spiritual journey, is the journey of the person. So it's all a person's ideas, a person's meditations, a person's experiences. And so at the end of the day, it's a human initiative. And it's the God you're experiencing, and I don't doubt for a second these people had real deep experiences, and continue people till today have these deep spiritual experiences, but it's an experience which they have achieved, and therefore it's only how deep they've reached, right? And the deeper, the more spiritual someone is, the deeper their experience, the deeper they dig into this, the deeper they go. But it's limited to the human experience. And the question I'll pose to you is it possible for the human experience to reach beyond the beginning of humanity, or beginning of human existence?
I would say if God allows it, yes. If God allows it.
But
Or if God...
anything I reach, anything I achieve is how I am coming to
So
this.
you're saying that no person can get this?
No.
Oh, all right, now I understand. Okay.
But,
But,
and here's where where the big but is,
yeah.
we believe that, and this is where I'm coming back to, we're going full circle. This is what the revelation was at Sinai. Jews did not come to this experience through their own quest, their own journeys. It was handed to them. God expressed Himself. It says, God came down on the mountain. Right? Jews didn't climb the mountain. God came down the mountain. What that means is, in the Torah, God expressed Himself to the Jew, to the human. So whereas every other spiritual pursuit is how us climbing high, us elevating ourselves to spiritual plateaus, and then we say, well, I can only go as high as I am, because I can never be higher than myself. I am me. So I can only reach a certain point. I can reach God of creation, God that's within the process of creation. Torah, a transcendent God descended. And so that's why Torah is unique. And we may have a less, the spiritual experience in Torah, we may feel it less than the spiritual experience that the mystics are having. But essentially it's more. We're not fully conscious and aware of the intimate union that's happening at that moment. And they're much more aware of their spiritual experience. So they're tripping over, whereas we're just studying Torah here and drinking coffee. But essentially, the actual spiritual experience, the intimacy with God is greater here. And so, if we go back to what is Shavuot, what happened at Sinai? We got a little sidetracked there, but it wasn't so much what God said, but it was the revelation itself. The medium was the message, the revelation where the Jew experienced a God that's beyond experience, beyond human comprehension or experience. That's why they passed out. It wasn't something which they could handle. And that's exactly what God invested in the world at that moment. Torah. They could practice these laws beforehand. They could put on tefillin, they could keep Shabbos kosher, and there'd be nice rituals. But they were never invested with the transcendent sanctity that God gave in Torah. And once the revelation occurred, that cosmic moment changed things forever. Now when we do a mitzvah, there's cosmic significance to the mitzvah. I'm investing in that moment of achievement, a moment of behavior of the mitzvah. There's something divine, transcendent about that we don't even relate to. We can't even fully appreciate. Just like it's like an act, every mitzvah is an act of intimacy, where it's something which you don't fully appreciate, or you could not fully appreciate it, and it's still happening, and there's something so deep and sublime about it. So essentially, Shavuot is celebrating this idea, this concept was introduced to the world. It was a game changer, a marriage between God and humanity. Until then, there was a great relationship. Abraham experienced God. Isaac, Jacob, Noah, Adam, they all had a relationship with God. But it was never an intimate relationship of marriage. Their core and God's core were never united, never connected. They understood God maybe rationally, they had mystical experiences, but there was never a union, a fusion. Whereas the transcendent God, God that's beyond human experience, beyond natural expression, in its fullest form became manifest within the person, within our behavior, within the world. And that was a world-changing moment that we continue to experience every single day. Every time we learn Torah, we have that experience. Every time we do a mitzvah, we have that experience. Our relationship with God that was consummated at Sinai is a continuous, ongoing marriage. And within a marriage, before people are married, I do you a favor, I help you out, great. Once we're married, every act of commitment to you is an expression of that intimacy that we share, right? Every act of even regular stuff we do for each other now has a different significance because it's an expression, it's part of that intimate relationship which we share. And the same is true with us and God. Once Torah was given, now every act we do, I give charity to a person on the subway, it's no longer just a kind act that makes the world a little bit better. It's now an expression of an intimate relationship between God and the world. It's now, in that moment I gave the coin to the person, there's a union between the spiritual and the physical, between transcendent God and the world around us. There's actually cosmic significance to that act. And that all happened at Shavuot. Every year when Shavuot comes around, we re-experience this. That's why we stay up all night and study Torah. Not just stay up all night because, great time to have fun. There's an energy in the air on Shavuot. We may not be in sync with it, or we may not, be conscious of it. But the energy that radiated then continues to come around the cycle every year. And we, quote unquote, renew our vows with God. That marriage energy is touching down on earth on Shavuot, on Saturday night, Sunday, and Monday. And so we do everything we can to capitalize on that. So we study Torah that night, because Torah is the way we experience intimacy with God. Right? It's like on the anniversary, we want to have an intimate encounter. We study Torah at night. The next morning, Sunday morning, we recreate the experience of revelation, where we read out of the Torah, the Ten Commandments. And really interestingly, we use a different tune than the regular tune we use for Torah reading. It's called Ta'am Elyon, the elevated tune, elevated truck. And the reason for this is if we want to, it's not a regular Torah reading where we're reading a text, a historic text. This is trans-historic. We are reliving, recreating that moment of Sinai. And when the reader chants Ten Commandments, we want to envision as if we're standing at the foot of Sinai and God or Moses are chanting the Ten Commandments. Which is why the Rebbe pushed very strongly that every Jew should make it to synagogue Shavuot morning. Just like Yom Kippur. The shuls will be packed like Yom Kippur. Just say we're bringing it back, right? And the idea is because this is the most significant moment of the Jewish story. And in that recreation of it, that's beyond history, we are recommitting ourselves and experiencing again that intimacy, that deepest connection with God. Bride and groom become husband and wife. And that happens Sunday morning at a Torah reading in its most full sense. So we should have a wonderful Shavuot. Enjoy the cheesecakes. But most importantly, make some time to study Torah, because that is how we experience God. And we may not be conscious of it, but it's happening. And especially on Shavuot itself, Shavuot night and the next morning, to experience those moments and create space in our lives for that encounter with God. Happy Shavuot.
Happy Shavuos.
Happy Shavuos. Thank you. Thank you. This was very good.